Hello, welcome to another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. I'm Wayne Highlander with Bona Adhesives.
I'm Rob Johnson with D. Bona Training.
All right, Rob, this is going to be part two of our podcast. We started last week with markup versus margin. It went long, and so we'll just go ahead and continue the conversation.
That text that I sent you, I was working with a gym crew
Hmm.
who used a ton of oil base. And they get some crazy floor from Europe, some pre-sealed European sport floor or something. So it
You didn't,
required water. These guys weren't familiar with the water.
Mhm.
So the first day, I think I sent you I think we had 8 hours, three guys, 24 man hours, but it was 8 hours. Now, 4 of those hours were spent screening and abrading. We were using diamonds, so abrading and cleaning was 4 hours.
Okay.
4 hours, half our day, and then 2 hours for the prep, and that's how we started the day. But it was 2 hours for the prep, 2 hours for coating. We got a coat on. Now we're coming back the next day, and this is what blew their mind. We only had about 2.5 hours of coating.
Mhm.
We
Wow.
took out 4 hours because we're using water base and we hot coated and we didn't have to go back. See what I'm saying? We
Yep.
didn't have to go
Yep.
back and abrade and clean.
Yep.
We just walked in, microfiber tack, and pulled the coat. Well,
Uh,
these guys they just, one guy's like, "Are you sure about this?" Because he felt like, "Oh, wait a minute. We always abrade. You have to abrade." I'm like, no, no, no. And I went through the whole thing, right? Went through
mhm.
the whole thing with this guy. I literally had to show him where it said it on the can, and then I even brought up the tech data sheets. There were a couple of older guys in the crew, and that was he goes, "Well, I could abrade if I wanted to, right?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely." I said, "But feel the floor. I mean it
Yeah.
it feels fantastic. You don't have to do anything here. We're good."
So if you see, if you go to a high-end restaurant, they want you to order appetizers, they want you to order drinks, they want you to order dessert, right? I mean, there's a reason why business, we can learn from a lot of different other businesses and what have you. And I think by taking all this into account, you know, charging your worth and charging what you need to do and whatever, and try to upsell when you can and streamline some things. Maybe you could take a business that was like, okay, it's been a tough year, blah, blah, blah. Or man, look at the small changes we made. And in the very least, you have to know what, and this is, I think, what, like, say, we all do this. We all want to get bigger, hire more guys, and get, you know, more jobs and bigger jobs coming in. And the one thing this guy will say in his book, and as I've learned, and I've talked to my wife after I read this book, is sometimes you have to fire your clients. And we had to fire one of our biggest customers. They owned, I mean, they got us started. They put us on the map. I started working with these three attorneys. They owned about six apartment buildings over the Bay Area, really nice, fancy places, and that's how I got my start in flooring business, by doing all their apartments. But I didn't charge them enough, and at the time it was fine. I was just learning the business. I was whatever. But as we got more custom work and more, whatever, then I couldn't afford to do his jobs anymore. I'd lose money, so we had to cut him loose. So anyhow, all right. As I said, I'll skip back here. Construction is a cost-based business. In order to make a profit, you must calculate your cost of goods and apply the appropriate markup factor so you can pay your expenses and have a net profit left over. Your proposals cannot generate a profit if you do not calculate your cost of goods and apply the correct markup factor. Without a profit and loss statement, you will have to guess at that number, and you cannot guess your way to profitability. So here's a good example. Let's say your income is $1 million. Okay, that's your top line income, that the money you brought in. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go look at your cost of goods for that year. There were $700,000. Okay, that's 70% of every dollar that came in. 70% of that dollar went for your cost of goods. Okay, if you sold the same amount of work for a higher price, then the percentage of cost of goods would go down. Okay, So if you sold that, if it was still, if it was $1 million, excuse me, if it was 1.1 million instead of 700,000, excuse me, I take it back. If it was 1.1 million and then your cost of goods was 700,000, it would be 63.6% instead of 70%. Do you see what I mean there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if you raised your price and your income was 1.1 million, instead of your cost of goods being 70% of every dollar, it would be 63.6%. Okay.
So by raising your price, it does not raise your cost of goods. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
So your expenses.
See, I don't have to read this book. I just got to talk to you.
There you go.
That's it.
I would encourage everybody to read the book because he goes way more into detail about how to do this, how to refine this and everything. And I want to give the guy credit for this.
Yeah.
So it's a really good book. And I read it over, well, I read it in a day. So, okay. So again, you're on your profit and loss. One, you have your cost of goods. In this case, it was 70%, 700,000. Let's say now your expenses were 250,000. Say 25% for every dollar you receive, 25 cents goes to expenses. Okay. Then your net profit is $50,000. That's equals 5% of every dollar of income you receive. It's 0.5 cents of net profit for the business. Okay. So, and by the way, if your cost of goods are above 70% of total revenue, then your price might be too low, or the cost of labor is too high for the production output. Okay. Cost of goods is pretty typical for a small business where the owner is doing most of all the work in the 70% range. They don't have a good pricing structure sometimes, or they aren't marking up the cost of goods enough to produce sustainable growth. Okay.
Yep.
So I think if nothing else out of this, figuring out your cost of goods and knowing how to mark it up because of that is the takeaway. Okay. To calculate your markup
Well, I
factor,
think that, but I also think when I was taking the notes here, if you don't watch your expenses, that can kill your
dude,
net profit. That's
it,
that is where the net profit gets killed,
yes. And a lot
is
of
in your
times,
expenses.
yeah. And a lot of times the owner is paying himself too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just not jiving with it. So something's got to give. And man, it's like stepping on a scale when you do a profit and loss statement and everything, and it just you know exactly where you're at. So, and then it tells you what you need to do. So for a healthy business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to calculate your markup factor, divide the dollar amount of total income by the dollar amount of your cost of goods. This will give you your markup factor over a given period of time. If your net profit in the profit and loss statement is low or negative, then you need to increase the markup factor and apply it to all your jobs. Okay. So to calculate your markup factor, divide the dollar amount of total income by the dollar amount of cost of goods. This will give you your markup factor, give you the markup factor over a given period of time. So you may say now at this point, you might say, well, my clients won't pay me any more money. Okay. And this guy suggests that you might need to find new clients. Once you realize that your salary is either a cost of goods or expense or a combination of the two, and you take into account on your profit and loss statement, you determine the markup you need to make a profit. You aren't really raising your price. You're being more accurate with the cost of goods and expenses. Remember, price equals cost times markup factor. Okay. When you determine your actual cost of goods and apply a markup factor to those cost of goods, you calculate your price. The more accurate you are at determining your cost of goods, the more accurate your markup factor will be. When clients say your price is too high, he suggests compared to what? Compared to your client's budget? Well, the client's budget is always too low. That's one thing about flooring is because usually when a guy buys a floor or the lady buys a floor, it's 7 to 10 years. So it's a new world every time they go to buy a floor. You know what I mean? You
Mm-hmm.
can't just,
Yeah.
so what do you mean it's too high? So, and is it too high compared to other contractors? Well, the other contractor might not be charged enough to make any profit. After all, have you ever gone in a restaurant and told the owner what you're willing to pay for a steak? Can you tell them that their price is too high? So like I said, sometimes the best thing you can do is fire clients. And I remember one guy, this one contractor, everybody wanted his work. And it was like, oh, if you got his work, like, wow, that's the statement. You guy does high end work and everything. Boy, he does a lot of work. So you're the guy doing all his floors. Gosh, man, that's great. But sometimes that guy ain't worth it. Sometimes you get three smaller guys that are way better than this guy that runs you around. He's never ready when he's supposed to be ready. The jobs are high liability jobs, and he never has everything the way it's supposed to be. His scheduling is all screwed up. He's a very much a late payer. So sometimes you got to fire those guys. Again, I'll stop right now again and say, Rob and I are just talking here. We're not, we don't know your business. We don't. This is just suggestions out here,
We got to
and
talk about something. What's this show, 400 or 370 or something? So,
yeah. But I,
but you know what? I know that I know what you're saying about, you know, taking advice from you and I, but if somebody just realizes what I just realized, if I had realized that when I was in my own business, that yeah, I was marking stuff up, but was I watching the expenses? No,
yeah, yeah,
no, and that was the killer, right?
yeah.
Because you're thinking, man, I should be make. How many times have you said this when you were self-employed? Man, I should have a lot more money left.
Yeah.
I marked that wood up. I did the, I charged this, and I think too sometimes people get caught in, and I say this only because I hear it from guys at the trainings, like, yeah, $5 a foot. Everybody around here is you can't get more than $5 a foot. Well, if $5 a foot doesn't work for you, don't work for it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know what I mean? Like this, all this, everything that we're talking about here, now you can kind of take a look at your jobs and say, well, maybe maybe I should raise my prices because I'm really not making any money. I'm
well,
getting by, but I'm not making any money.
yeah. You and I talked about this recently too, that, all right, in 1980, I was charging 275 a square foot. And if you ask me why was I charging that amount? Well, that's what all the top guys were charging. You know what I
Yes.
mean? That was like the high end of that. I thought, yeah,
Yes.
so I must be doing right. I must be doing, but that's no way to base your number. I mean, that's just
Exactly.
that you don't know
Yes.
anything in it. I don't know if the other guys know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
So I'll get into some more interesting information about that a little bit later. Okay.
All right.
All right. Focusing on top line sales do not bring you more profit. It isn't producing more profit than it actually making you less money and adding to your liability if it isn't producing you more profit. Okay. So, like I said at the beginning, everybody wants to, go out there and bring in as much income and get as much jobs as you can. Focusing on top line sales does not bring you more profit. If it isn't producing more profit, then it's actually making you less money and adding to your liability. Okay. Efficiency increases profits. Now, this is again what I talked about earlier with some of the techniques out there, some of the products, some of the stains, the drying time, uh, you know, that can definitely help your business.
Well, that was exactly what I went through this week.
Yeah. Uh,
I mean,
increase.
on doing two coats on that gym, I cut their labor by a third,
Wow.
1/3 by switching from oil to water
Mhm.
because of being able to hot coat.
Yeah.
And there's the whole thing about unloading and getting there. You know what I mean? There's that whole thing too, the cleanup, the everything. I
Yeah.
mean, that is why I'm just I'm I'm still a little surprised every once in a while when people are like, "Nah, I'm not really." Hey, we make both. We make both guns. oil and
Mhm.
water, whatever you
Yeah,
want to do. It's not like in our other life, we didn't make oil at the company that we used to be with. It was all water. So
right.
now I do make both. So it's really easy for me to say, hey, man, I make both. I know they're both awesome, but I can save you a lot of time, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of time. Like I said, we
Um,
cut their recoat labor by a third for not having to go back and abrade and clean up on a 15,000 foot gym.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, like say my father-in-law he didn't know anything about the hardwood floor business. It was the farthest thing from his mind. He was a construction superintendent, but when I started doing floors and he just asked me, well, he didn't know anything about water base. He saw it. He goes, "What the hell is this?" I said, "It's water base, blah blah blah." And he started reading the label, and he goes, "Well, shit, look how many look he put two coats on in a day." I mean, why wouldn't you do it? And was doing the math in his head. He's like, dude, this doesn't make any sense otherwise. Anyhow,
Yeah.
and he didn't know anything other than from a business perspective. That's why I always think it's interesting to take information from people that are just not in our business in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, okay, there's another show for that later. I got good stuff, but
Hey,
anyhow,
hey, hey, wait a minute. I gotta tell you the greatest line I heard ever this week.
okay.
Okay. So these guys had never used the prep system.
Hmm.
So I'm going over the prep system and I got a great picture. I'll share it with you guys when we're done. I showed them abrading the floor on on an area that we did not use prep and then abrading the floor where we did use prep.
Okay.
Okay. Wait do you see the pieces of bracers? It'll blow you away. And I said, now, the crud that's on this one here where we didn't use the prep, I said, we might have got away with it. The
Hmm.
coat might have stuck. I said, but, that potentially could be a bond breaker. I said, prep is just an amazing insurance policy. Okay.
Hmm.
I said, because look at how clean it is. And these guys were from Trinidad. So they were just there. It was a fun crew. Okay.
Yeah.
And the oldest guy in the crew, married 42 years, he goes, so you're telling me prep is like having a woman on the side? I said,
Yeah.
I said, I go, if that's what you want to call an insurance
Mm,
policy, yeah.
yeah.
And then for the rest of the 2 days, every once in a while, this guy would just yell out, "Woman on the side! I love the prep."
Oh man. Oh, that's too funny.
Oh my God. I think that's when I might have shot you that text. I'm like, man, I'm
Uh,
having too much fun.
uh.
I'm having too much fun on this job.
All right. So again, efficiency increases profits. Increase profit margins, increase profits without having to increase sales. So better efficiency, increase profit margins, and then increase sales will skyrocket your profits. Selling more work and increasing the top line revenue is not the solution. And that's the kind of the sad thing is that we're chasing your tail because you don't know what to set your pricing at yet, right? Selling at the right price and maximizing margins is key, especially in small businesses when you can't scale up. Often small businesses will say, I will work on this when it slows down. That's not a good solution. Okay. We've all been there. Okay.
Yep.
If you do 100 jobs a year at $1,000, that'd be $100,000, right?
Hmm.
If you double your price to $2,000 per project, you could afford to lose 50% of your customers and still make the same money. So what will you do with the rest of the 6 months, right? The fact is you will not lose half your customers because your customers love you. So there is that, okay? And then this is a wild example, but you get kind of get. And I'll go back to the example of a really good contractor, very successful contractor, who I'll never forget this. Told me he raised his price by $1 a square foot. Not, in increments. Oh, this week I'll raise it by 30%. Next month I'll raise by another 30. But no, he raised his square foot price by $1 a square foot. And he said his customers never batted an eye. And he said, and the worst part about it is like, how long did I leave all that money sitting on the table? He's a very good, sharp, reputable contractor. Okay. So back to that example, you can afford to lose half of your customers when you pay double your prices or you charge double your prices, but you probably won't. Let's say you lost 40% of your customers. That leaves you with 60 jobs per year at your new price of $2,000 per job. That's $120,000 of total revenue. 60 jobs times 2,000, that's a 20% more revenue, and you still have 40% of your time available to serve these customers. Okay. And this is the key. Don't miss this. This 40% of time is important. The only way customers will pay for that premium of a service is they receive a premium experience. So charge more, you get. I've said this before. One thing that was key to success early in my business is when I started charging a lot more money for my jobs, and it wasn't just that I got more money. That was one benefit of it. But what the other benefit was, I was now in nicer jobs, better subfloors, more customers that were willing to pay, and being around general contractors that were, they just had really, everybody on the job was like the painter was a stud painter. Everybody was there was respectable of each other when they worked and everything. It was just in a completely different environment. I felt like I wasn't down there fighting with everybody else now with the crumb kickers. Now and you can charge more money. You can take your time on jobs and do more custom work. Okay.
Hold on.
So
Was this in the book?
no, that's what I'm saying to you.
No, this what you're going through here. Doubling your
Yes,
price, losing half.
yes,
This was in the
yes,
book?
yes.
All right. I can't say who this contractor is. I'm very close to these people.
Hmm.
Extremely close. I won't even say what state they're in, but they were in a dogfight. Okay, they had a bunch of crews and they were in a dogfight, and the dogfight was it was probably the late 90s into the early 2000s, and to maintain and keep everybody working and everything going, they got into the dogfight of lowering the price, lowering the price, lowering the price.
Hmm.
Where finally, family stepped in and said, "You can't keep this up.
Yeah,
Okay, you can't keep this up. You'll just drive it out of business." Multi-generational family, and I don't know if the family read this book but he said double your price, and they said we can't double. That's insane.
hmm,
We'll lose everybody. They doubled their price and they lost 30%. That's how much they lost by doubling their price. 30%.
yeah.
The advice they got was double their price and let go of your bottom two crews.
Wow.
If you have a crew, if you say to somebody when you're scheduling or whatever, I can't put crew XYZ on that job. Well, then you don't want crew XYZ.
Yeah,
So they cut a couple of their crews and doubled their price. It was overnight. The change was overnight when they did this.
that's super
It was
interesting.
insane. They
So
lost their headaches and they started making money because they thought they were going to lose 80% of their customers. They ended up losing about 30.
yeah,
It
and
was
and
crazy.
so while doubling your price might in our industry might be like, okay, that's out of line, whatever. But if you raise it by 20%, 30%, whatever, even 40%, okay, and say you lost that, percentage of your customers, right? You probably lose a percentage of them. But you're not going to lose them all. And like you said, it's going to give you frees up more time. The jobs are more profitable, and then it gives you more time to look for better customers. So I think that's very interesting. And this next thing I'm going to say remind me of you, because a CPA in this book says that when he asks a company what their closing rate is, and the answer is a greater percentage than 50%, it's an indication that the profits are too low. More profitable companies, closing rates are usually in the 30 to 50% range. We spoke,
Wow.
yeah. Remember we talked one time and you said, man, I'm a great salesman, man. I close.
Oh, that's all I cared about.
Yeah, your closing rate.
That was it. I had to close 90%. Now I know why.
Yeah. So, all right. So this is where this guy in the book, and this is where I'm going to, again, the book is called Profit First for Contractors by Sean Van Dyke. Transform your construction business from a cash eating monster to a money making machine. This is where he it gets interesting. Why I think you should buy the book. A good way to change your business profit first calculation is profit first formula in sales is sales minus profit equal expenses. And this forces you to prioritize your profits and operate a business on what's left. This is really interesting to me. If the business can't operate on what's left, then the business must raise the prices, cut expenses, or a combination of the two, but you don't mess with the profits. So, as I said, you set up 5 different checking accounts for your business. So one checking account is for income, 2 is for profit. And he said, listen, start out at 1%, whatever. Start out at small and incrementally work your way up. Number 3 is the owner's compensation. How much would you have to pay a guy with your level of skill? Number 4 is your tax. All right, set aside. I think anybody's been in business, if you get hit at the end of the year with, oh, all of a sudden I owe the IRS $11,000, that's an ugly thing to have to contend with. All right, that's why you want to keep this one. All right, and the other one, number 5, is the operating expenses. After you pay all the rest of the accounts, this is what you have left to run your business. Okay, so you serve these accounts sequentially as the money comes in. Never pay your bills first. The money moves from income account to profit account to owner's compensation to tax to operating expenses, no exceptions. If there's not enough money left over for your expenses, you do not pull from the other accounts. It is telling you that you can't afford them or raise your prices. All right. He says, start small. If you get a check for $10,000, your company can run on 10. If it can run on 10K, then it can surely run on 9,900, right? So put that $100 in your what's it called? Your profit account. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
As an aside, a little note about CPAs. Now, this I found really interesting too, and this might be controversial. I don't know. CPAs will tell you to pay yourself through the owner's draws. This is the most common mistake I see in construction businesses. Depending on the legal structure of your business, this is the only way to limit your tax liability, but owner's draws do not show up on the profit and loss statement. That is where it's really interesting to me. Technically, taking an owner's draw may save you some money in taxes, but it costs you more money in revenue because you're not pricing your work correctly. It doesn't show up in your profit and loss statement. Your cost of goods and expenses are artificially suppressed, and you'll never make a net profit if the net profit at the bottom of the profit and loss statement is incorrect. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to read that again. So when we had it, the CPA told us that you pay yourself in draws, and that's the way we had it set up. But this guy's saying, no, that's for construction. It's unique to the construction industry, is that probably other industries as well, but the owner's draws don't show up on the profit and loss statement. So technically taking an owner draw, you may save time, you save money in taxes, but it's costing more money in revenue because you're not pricing your work correctly. Your cost of goods and expenses are artificially suppressed, so you never make a net profit if the net profit at the bottom of the profit and loss statement is incorrect. That's garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right.
All right. So then he'll say, most people will say they want to do high-end work. The best way to do high-end work is to charge high-end prices. Nobody sells a
That
Lamborghini.
is a nugget.
Yeah.
Say that one again. I like that one.
Most people will say they want to do high-end work. The best way to do high-end work is to charge high-end prices. Nobody sells a Lamborghini at Nissan Altima prices. That would scare off clients. Also, you don't have enough money in the bid now to take your time and do a first class job. And I've said this example 20 different times when I went to buy a truck. And I've worked out of a van for 30 years, and then I never had a nice truck because I was always in a work van. And when Judy had a car, it didn't make sense to have another car. Blah blah blah. But so when I wanted to buy a truck, I wanted to buy a really nice truck, and I go to the car lot, whatever, and they would show me these other trucks. Like when I was, and I wanted the nicest one. I wanted what I thought the nicest one was the Toyota Tundra at the time. But anyhow, um, so why limit yourself? You know what I mean? So anyhow,
That's a, you know what? That's a really good statement right there. You want to do high-end work, just charge high-end prices.
yeah, I
Boy,
believe it.
that seems simple, but man, that is what we try to that's what we've been trying to preach here. Everybody calls us greedy,
If
but
you're if you're a typical wealthy consumer, you know things cost money. You look at stuff all you look at leather chairs, you look at whatever, you look at cars, you know that nice things cost a lot of money. You know that there's no nice thing that's cheap because that would scare you off. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it totally makes sense. So if
You
your
know,
goal,
when Natural Seal first came out, I told Bum, get a case of this and keep it in your truck. Okay? And
Mhm.
the first time that homeowner, and I said, you've heard it before, we've all heard it. I said, the first time that homeowner sticks her head in the door and says, hey, boy, if it could just stay that color when you're vacuuming and tacking, getting ready to drop your first coat, now you can say to her, you're gonna get you gotta buy finish anyways. So now you can say to her, hey, for 50 cents a foot, no problem, I can do that.
Yes.
So he calls me about a month later and he goes, man, I hate it when you're right. He goes, but I made a huge mistake. I said, really? He goes, yeah. She stuck her head in the door and said, boy, if it would just stay that color, I'd love that color.
Mhm.
And he goes, well, 75 cents a foot, and I have a sealer that will do all that. And he's like, that was the mistake I made, was kind of holding my breath on 75 cents. And he goes, the money meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. He said, I could have said $2
Yeah.
extra a foot, and I know she would have gone for it. And I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy when it comes to how much we think we can charge or how much they can afford or things like that. And it's funny because after that, Bum said every time he's going to go do an estimate, man, he searches the hell out of these people. He does whatever he can to find them and,
Mhm.
see if they are kind of a high-end clientele type person. And I said, so you're spying on him? He goes, no, I'm just doing research. I'm
Well,
like, wow,
I mean,
it kind of
people.
makes sense. And now his prices are, he is by far the highest guy in the area. It's crazy, but
Wow.
not crazy to him.
Yep. All
And
right.
I know other guys in the area that have thanked me for the
Well,
kid. Like, wow, our prices look really good compared to his. So
yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good thing for everybody.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Another thing here. So we're coming to the end here. So if your goal, let's say your goal is a top line revenue of $1 million, how much time do you really want to look at jobs that are like $800? How many of these jobs would you need to hit your goal? So I always look at how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? If you think, okay, my top line, I want to do $1 million. All right, well then you break that down, divided by 12 months. Then that by 50 weeks. I mean, how much do I need to produce every week? And it kind of makes me look at, all right, well, do I really want to look at these jobs? Does that make sense to me in my use of my time? We had Chris Pasquale on here too that talked about charging for estimates. And that was a really good episode with him talking about how much time he got back by charging for estimates. And so again, we look at the amount of time you have. That's the only thing we have as contractors is our time, and how we spend that time and how much we charge for it at the end of the year is how successful we're going to be, right? So common mistakes that contractors do again, oftentimes contractors do it backwards for the growth for growth's sake. They focus on more jobs, more crews, more revenue, and they figure out later if they're doing what they're doing is profitable. So it's out of sequence. So if you get your system first, like, all right, my cost of goods are this, my expenses are this, and what I need to do with my markup, then I start bidding my jobs with that markup in mind, and then you got a good system. You're off to the races. Another mistake is not reviewing your expenses. Rob and I talked about that. You need to look where every penny is going out the door. And then ask yourself, do I really need this? So when you do that formula, if it is paying yourself first in profit, and then the business has to run on what's left, that'll tell you real quick, do I need to charge more? Do I need to cut things out? Do I really need these things? Is this really critical or got to cut this expense out?
That'll get you sharp.
And number three, believe it or not, stop investing in your company. So this may sound shocking, but what many construction business owners consider investing is really stealing. Don't kid yourself. The reason you invest this money is because the actual cash doesn't exist. Truly investing in your company means that you allocate a certain amount of capital in the company, calculate your ROI, and work a plan to realize that rate of return. Simply taking your compensation through owners' distributions is not investing, it's stealing. And I'll give you an example of that. Like I'm guilty of that. Like I would say to myself, okay, just for example, I'm just it came top of mind. I'm going to get the new Festool saw and the tracks and everything, all the Festool, the router and the whole setup and everything, and I'll go down there and pay for it. Well, really, that's coming out of my compensation, right? I didn't set money aside for that and whatever. That's really, it's coming out of my money. I can say that it's for the business or whatever, but in his way of looking at it, it's stealing from the business. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And that's pretty sharp. So anyhow, we are not preaching. We've made every mistake in the book. Rob and I both. This took years and years to finally, through CPAs and other CPAs and trial and effort and blood, sweat, and tears. That
Well, the other
hopefully,
thing too is how many guys we talk to all over the country. We hear great ideas, and then we hear guys that are just, getting killed. So,
yeah. So
like you said, we've made every mistake, and we talk to guys who are making the same mistakes, and you know, just trying to raise all boats.
and some guys are rip the band-aid off real quick and do it right now. Some guys are like slowly peel the band-aid off. How you want to approach change. But I'm going to hold the book up again. Profit first for contractors. That's the guy right there. And that was a really good read. Like I said, I read it in a day. And I didn't go through all the stuff. I didn't go through all the stuff that he teaches and stuff. So that's why I think it's worth getting the book if you're interested in it, because he goes into some Excel spreadsheets and stuff like that how he does things. And so anyhow, I thought it was really, really good. And there you go. That was a long show for us, but I hope people found it was worthwhile. Okay, so Rob, you know, just in case you decide not to do all these things, the markup versus margin and what have you, and those type of things, are looking at business, all these things that we're talking about here. I do have an alternative retirement plan, which
And
I
tell
call
me
my
about it.
my slip and fall retirement plan.
And what is a slip and fall retirement plan?
You could go into restaurants or commercial buildings and accidentally slip and fall. And
Hmm.
I thought that might be a good plan. Then I was thinking what I could do. I could offer a course in slip and falls, right?
Yeah.
And then, charge for the course. and then, sign them up and take like a 20% because you could tell them like, all right, the best restaurants to slip and fall in, the most profitable one is the one to stay away from. Um, what questions the attorneys might ask, those type of things.
Hmm.
And then I could give you what do you call it? Protected territories. Where no other slip and fall guys, you get exclusive territories where no other slip and fall guys could come into that area. You could be the slip and fall guy for that region.
Mm,
What do you think? If you
that's
slip and
great.
fell
And
4 times a
I mean,
month,
why stop there? Why stop at slip and falls? Why don't you just, that could be part of it. Then
rear
you can be one of
enders.
those people. No, one of those people that they get out on the streets there driving
Mm-hmm.
and they slow down, slow down, slow down till you're right on their bumper and then slam on the brakes and they rear end you.
That's what I said, rear enders.
Yes. Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Okay, I was,
yeah,
yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
it can
you
be a
could
whole
do
thing.
if you
Yeah.
figured, I don't know what the payout is on slip and fall just for you to go away, but let's say you slip and fail 4 times a month,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And you increase that maybe by if you go up to 6 or 7 times a month, slip and
Mm.
falls activities.
Hmm.
Um, Throw in a rear ender here and there. I bet you can make a pretty damn good living. There's
There's a good
always hope.
retirement. Right. There's a
Damn
good
right there
retirement.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. But at our age, you
Slip and
better
fall
know how
might
to
be,
fall. Slip and fall could
yeah.
be one shot.
You're taking a big risk
Yeah.
at our age.
Yeah. Really.
Slip and fall might
Slip and
really be the
fall.
end.
I fell twice last year in training centers and
Yeah.
it
Well,
was easy. It was
you
easy.
the thing is when you get a guy in his 60s and 70s that slip and falls, you don't want to watch it on camera because it's going to be so slow and awkward. You're going to realize it's really a slip and fall character.
Well, that's when I knew
Going to gently land.
I'm not that old. Okay.
Hmm.
I am old, but I'm not that old
Hmm.
because both times I fell, everybody laughed.
Ah,
You know,
yeah.
nobody's laughing at a old guy falling.
No.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah. I think
But
the percentage of slip and falls, you're better off slipping forward than backwards. I think you would do less damage, right? That's all in my book.
I got hooked up in a cord and I went down forward. Yeah.
Ooh,
And it
yeah,
was,
that's.
and one of the guys was like, that was the slowest fall down I've ever seen in my life.
We started on one side of the room and ended up falling on the other.
Like I
Oh my God.
almost held it, man.
Oh
I
man.
almost caught it. He
Hmm.
goes, that took seconds to happen.
Wow. Wow. It's not like when you're younger and you're just walking, you start to trip and then you just like break into a trot. Like you
Well,
didn't.
in my younger days, I took judo. I would fall and roll, baby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the second time I fell, that's when I went into the judo roll. Okay.
Ah,
You hit your
you take
shoulder and
yeah,
turn. Yeah,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
The only problem is with judo, you would fall and pop up. Okay.
Mm.
I did the judo roll, but ended up just laying there on my back screaming, don't just laugh, help me up.
Ah. I watched this kid one time on the social media account say that
But I did the ninja roll, though. I did it
huh,
halfway.
should have jumped up like you're gonna attack the cord.
Yeah.
I seen a kid on one of these social media things say that he's never so depressed in his life, and you could tell he'd been beat up. And he goes, "I'm just disgusted. I mean, absolutely disgusted, man." He goes, "I just totally had my ass kicked. I've been taking karate for 10 years, and this is the first time I was ever like in a fight, and this kid just beat the hell out of me. And this kid obviously, didn't have any kind of skills other, you know what I mean? He was
Yeah. Yeah.
unskilled fighter and beat the hell out of this guy. He's been doing karate for 10 years of
Ha!
his life.
Ha!
And I felt bad for the guy too.
You need a new sensei.
Yeah. Although I know karate is not just to beat people up. Uh, so there you go. All right. Anyhow, that's it.
I like the
So,
retirement, Wayne.
so if
I
it
like
doesn't
the way you're
work,
thinking.
so if
Yeah.
the other thing doesn't work, there's always hope. All right. This has been another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. Please stay tuned for another episode.